Our work session, and we are Facebook Live for our work session. And we've got a different table today, so I want to welcome our Alderman-to-be, Alderman-elect. We've got William Hoke up here, who's going to be Ward 5.
Yep.
We have Alderman-elect Skinner. I was trying to stay out of your way. Yes, it'll be so much different. Yes, thank you, Alderman-elect Skinner.
Yes, ma'am,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
And we will have nameplates ready for you at the July the 1st meeting, and yeah, we're going to be giving him his on the 17th, so we'll see. Anyway, I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting. We have a treat today. Mr. Kemp is going to give us a thorough recap of what he's been doing as it relates to utilities, specifically the successes in water that he's seen, and then the wastewater issues that we've got to address in this next term, quickly in this next term, I might add. So, Mr. Kemp, I'm going to give the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity, Vice Mayor, Alderman-elect. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about today about some of the things that we've been working on over the last several months. So appreciate the opportunity to give an update. And as usual, if there's something that prompts a question, please interrupt me and stop me, and we'll talk about it. Do whatever you want to talk about. This is what I really wanted to kind of cover today. But again, if there's other things that are pertinent, I'd be happy to kind of try to do my best to discuss those too. Water loss and operational update. The last time I presented related to water was the first meeting in January. And so we're about 6 months past that. And so coming up with a regular rhythm to kind of give an update on that and some of the operational changes we've made that has resulted in some successes, I think, I want to share with you guys. We have updated our capital improvement plan for water and sewer, and just try to show you guys what that looks like, some of the reasons why it was updated, some of the major changes, and get some feedback from you if you like, and then talk a little bit about, assuming we proceed with that improvement plan, what the schedule for those corresponding projects on the very near term look like. Some of those are already in flight. Some of them are actually already under contract. So kind of give you an update on that, and specifically what that translates into when they're going to be finished. I think is kind of really what the end game of what people are interested in. And then how do we pay for it? Luckily, our budget chair is here, and she has been a great help in collaborating on some different scenarios for the financial plan. So, sound good, Mayor?
Yeah, sounds fun.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
All right. So back to our original water eval. One of the things that came out that was kind of a surprise to I think everybody was about the water loss, and we've spent really almost the last year trying to wrap our head around it, coming up with the reasons for it. The 2023 water loss were around 45%. You can see the water loss from last calendar year, 24. And then we started in earnest trying to identify the reasons for it, and then ultimately what are the solutions and how do we fix it and improve it, probably starting around the fall of last year, September, October time frame. So we've really been working on this hot and heavy for about 8 months. And you know, if you remember, some of you were here for the initial presentation back in January, we broke it down into 7 main categories of things that we were wanting to explore and things that we thought were contributors to the water loss. And I'll go through each of these briefly and give you an update on all the things that we've done in each of these categories and what those result in. So we'll start with unmetered connections. These are all the locations where we have a connection to our water system that is unmetered. We have several locations that have a connection with adjacent water associations. We have 2 connections with Mississippi State. For emergency connections, we inspected all of those to make sure that they weren't operating and we were losing water in those ways. And you can see everything that's grayed out are things that we've accomplished. At the last meeting, I just wanted to keep those on the table so you understood kind of the full scope of what we're doing. We inspected all the cross-country lines. We have a lot of fire protection in areas where we don't serve water. We wanted to check, make sure those fire protection lines weren't tapped into inadvertently. And then we also were reviewing some of our SCADA systems on our tanks to see if there was some big, large leaks somewhere in non-use hours, kind of the early morning, and that would indicate maybe a big leak somewhere. Since that time, we've also done some fire line testing. That would be another potential way that water is being lost, being unmetered. And we started on that. We inspected, I think, 3 facilities with that. We have to do some follow-up on those. Those are our big manufacturing type facilities. Some that have kind of grown over time. As you expand over a period of time, there is a possibility that a fire protection line inside of a building could get tapped for domestic use. Not purposeful, but just how things evolve over time. So we wanted to kind of check and make sure that those are being used for the right purposes. We haven't found anything significant so far, but we are going to continue to investigate that. We also continue to look at our production volumes. If you remember, that was one of the findings from the last time in our initial study, that there was approximately a 7% loss just from our well meters. So these are the amount of water that we're producing from the wells. Our meters were about 15 years old, and there was some inaccuracies, both positive and negative, on those meters. But ultimately, we were showing that we were producing 7% more water than we were actually producing. So since that time, we've installed new digital meters on all 7 of our wells. You can see some photographs there at 2 of our sites and what those look like. They've all been calibrated. They've all been incorporated into our SCADA system as of last month, and that was probably around the $60,000 investment. But going forward, we will have no contributor loss to our well meters. So that's a positive, and I think we'll have much better accuracy on our production. The graph on the left is something that I kind of have been thinking about and playing with. And what that looks like, I know it's kind of hard to read, but that is a month, well production by month over the last 5-year period. And each line is a different month from January to May. And I think the main thing I wanted to bring your attention to is if you look at the difference between 2024 and 2025, nearly all of those, with the exception of the month of April, are all trending down. And April is essentially flat with a slight trend up. And the story there, in my mind, is I feel like we are doing a much better job of capturing where the leaks are, so we're producing less water that is then being not wasted, but is part of our non-revenue losses. So I think that we'll continue to watch this, but I think that this is a very positive trend as it relates to our production, total production kind of trending down. The other thing that we did is trying to quantify our non-revenue volumes. And just as a reminder, these are all the typical functions that we need to operate a water system, as well as any losses of water from a water leak. Okay, so you see all the different categories up at the top. Major leaks, our lines, we've categorized them greater than 8 inches. These are very large, don't happen as often, although we had a little bit in May. And then minor leaks, you'll see, is the lion's share of our non-revenue volume loss. All water lines less than 8 inches, which is the majority of our system. We're measuring our new water filling station at Op Center. Any tank maintenance is when we have to drain a tank for repairs or painting. Filter backwash happens on a monthly basis. Brown water flushing is typically as needed. And you'll notice that we have started doing the fire hydrant testing in coordination with our fire department, and we are tracking that volume that we're doing per test. So that is something that we're tracking heavily. So if you think about the equation, if you will, of water loss is the difference between how much you produce and how much you sell, okay? And then that delta, or that difference is kind of, okay, how do you break that down further? And it's into non-revenue water loss, which is this, and then anything remaining is unknown volume. And that's the, really, to me, that is what we are targeting. That's what we're really, really focusing on, is the amount of water that we don't know where it's going. Okay, it could be going through a meter that's being unbilled. We found some of that. It could be a leak that we're not aware of that then needs to be put on our non-revenue. So that has been really our laser-like focus here for the last 6 to 8 months. Before I get to the unknown losses, I just wanted to show you another trend line here. This is our production on the top. You can see our production is trending down. Again, a testament, I think, to our operational teams, and they're trying to limit the duration that our leaks are occurring. You could say our non-revenue losses at the bottom are generally flat, but the gap between those two lines is narrowing. Okay, so I think that what that translates into is also a reduction in your unknown revenue, which is what this line shows. These are our unknown losses by month. And really, if you boil it down, this is really what I want the board to kind of focus on, because I think this is the story on water loss. You can see how it has changed per month, going back from when we really started trying to understand where all this was happening up until most recently in April, when we had a 17% unknown losses. So we will continue to focus on this. We will continue to try to drive this number down, hopefully into the single digits very soon. But generally very happy about the trend line and the slope that we're trending down. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so February is an anomaly. Is that potentially because of the shorter month and fewer revenue cycles in that month? Do we just discard it as an outlier, or is there some other explanation?
I think it could be all of those things. It also could reveal itself from potentially some adjustments that you make in a previous or following timing. Yes. So I think that's why you really do need to look at it over a longer period of time to see how you're. But likewise, you have some that are lower and some that are higher. But something we are tracking very, very closely every single month when we get that.
And we have visited this once before when we first rolled this out, of the standard acceptable difference was somewhere, industry or municipal or whatever, it's somewhere between 10 to 20, is that correct?
Depending on, in some states have standards from a regulatory standpoint of what they would want you to fall within. There's none for Mississippi, but it depending on the state, right here. So I think 10 to 20 is probably a good goal. We would like to get it below 10, and I think we can. We continue to track our revenues to see if those what those do from a resulting from the sales. And in theory, if your production's going down and your non-revenue is going down and your customer level is staying similar, then your revenue should be potentially going up. So we're seeing that a little bit. You'll see the 2024 rate increase, I indicated that, and that actually revealed itself in November as we started billing in October. And you can see that pink line, that jump up in the revenue there. And then it continues on into 2025, which is the kind of the Kelly green color bar. These are going back several years, and each month is helpful to look back year over year, but it is all very weather dependent too. So you can't really say, like for example, in February, the sales in 25 were lower than they were. This is revenue. The revenue in 25 was lower than revenue in 24. It could have just been a month when there just wasn't a lot of water use. But you can see the last couple of months in March and April that those revenue numbers for 25 compared to 24 are trending up. So I think that's a positive, and I think we'll again see that over time as we get more data points. We wanted to understand the metering issues, so going back to, again, the categories, these are some of the things that we have currently done since January. We've repaired the non-communicative meters. We've done 1,500 of those. Just to give you guys an idea, this is a typical residential meter setup. This is what we call the brass. This is in the ground. This is where the water kind of flows through. This is our head. That is an AMI head that registers the amount of usage. And then this is our antenna that transfers or transmits all the data usage back to billing. And over time, what we're seeing is we're reaching useful life on all the initial installs of our antennas, which means that this is all still working. The water's still going through and it's still being captured in the meter. It's just not giving that real-time data and it's not showing up on, like, for example, your customer pool, which is really helpful. So our challenge right now and what we've been working on is replacing all these antennas that have failed. Because what we're having to do, if we're not getting these readings through the AMI system, we're having to go out and manually read these, which is taking a lot of time and labor, effort. So we've replaced about 1,500 of these. We would have replaced more, but we were waiting on inventory. But we really improved that. We've done Honeywell training to try to understand our system better, how we can improve it.
It's just right.
We've replaced, we've done testing on 16 locations of the large meters. Large meters are 6 inches and greater. Now we're moving down to the next tier. We inspected some 4-inch meters last week. We've improved our gatekeepers. Our gatekeepers are our hubs that are collecting the data from the meters in 2 locations that we have water-only areas. The way that our AMI system, just so you know, the water sends a signal, piggybacks on an electric meter, the electric meter sends it to the gatekeeper transfers it to the office. But we have a lot of areas where we have water only. We don't have electric meters for them to piggyback on, so we're trying to improve the infrastructure in some of those locations and doing some pilot projects, specifically in the Bluefield area and in Adelaide, to try to figure out how do we capture some of these AMI data directly from the water meters. And we're finding some success on that. We're learning about it, so we'll continue to work on that. The other thing that we have instituted here really in the last month or so that I'm really happy about, utilizing the meters that are communicating the data management system from our meters, is getting alerts. We're running queries several times a week, and primarily looking at residential right now, but putting a threshold of 15,000 gallons over a 2-day period. And if a property or a meter shows up that exceeds that, we're calling the customer and saying, hey, just wanted to let you know we got an alert. You may want to check your plumbing, see if there's a leak around your house. And we've had some really good feedback from customers on that. We'll continue to do that and really kind of build it into our normal daily operations.
Did you say 15,000 gallons?
That's the threshold we're doing right now. And so which is a lot of water. Yeah. We've had one person said, yeah, I had to fill up my kiddie pool 3 times because I had found a leak in it. Or we've had several people that say, I live out of town, do you mind going out over and cutting the water off? And so the ultimate goal goes back to production, trying to lower that production or waste of water. Yes, ma'am.
And I know y'all had that system conversion last year. Does that allow you to generate more reports and this sort of thing than you were able to before?
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. And then while we're waiting on the next shipment of these, which is expected in August the 21st is the date we have circled. We're getting 2,000 of these according to our vendor. We'll be ready for them. We're going around into all of our water meter boxes of the locations where the meters are not communicating and prepping them. So we're cleaning them out, we're getting it ready, making sure that everything else is functioning. And so when we get that shipment of antennas in, all we have to do is essentially go plug and play, reprogram it, putting it in the system and move on. It'll go a lot quicker. So that's what our goals are right now. We've already done 1,350 locations of those. We'll have that wrapped up either this week or next week for all the locations in the city. So the graph on the left, I just wanted to bring this to your attention again. I like diving into all this data and understanding it. The blue line, so we have 4 different billing cycles. Those are indicated there on the left-hand side. From bottom to top is 1 to 4. And then the blue line is what our meter, the number of meters that we were having to manually read from the period from August, on average, from August of last summer to January. In January, we started doing a wholesale replacement of these antennas. And so you can see cycle 1, which is our largest, we went from around 1,100 meters we're having to read every single month. By going in and replacing these, we've reduced that down to a little over 600. So we're seeing some success on this. Our limiting factor in Achilles right now is just getting this equipment in so we can do it. But we have a shipment of 2,000 coming, and we already have ordered another 1,500. Both board has approved both of those. And so I'm hopeful by the end of the year, you will see that orange line moving much closer to in the 100 or less per cycle, which would be definitely a goal. There's always going to be other meters where we have continued failure of the antennas, so that will be an ongoing thing until we replace everything. But I think we're right now in a phase where we're almost kind of rebuilding and kind of doing a major revamp of our water metering system. And so obviously costing a lot of money too, but that's kind of really our focus on the metering side.
And for our benefit, for scale purposes, how many total water accounts do you roughly? Because I know it varies day to day.
Yeah, so probably around 11 to 12,000 meters and probably around 16,000 customers. And you might say, well, why are those different? Some locations we have a master meter. We have one large meter that serves, say, an apartment complex. And each of those units has a water account, but the developer, property owner, is the only paying the usage from that one meter, and then all the individual units are paying the base rate.
And then
Does that answer?
It does. And then the other question, particularly for the new guys who may not have been keeping up with water 10 years ago, when did we change out, and what is the useful life here? So
I think we did the major revamp around 2009 to 11 timeframe.
That's when Doug was here.
right.
This is
so this should be expected that we're seeing
yes,
this sort
yeah.
of-
This is the newest version of these antennas, what they call version 4. I guess it's the 4th iteration. All the equipment we have in the ground from the first iteration were version 2 or 3. And so this has a bigger battery, stronger antenna signal stream. They indicate that this is going to be 15 to 20 years. So we have reached on some of the locations that are already failed, so 15 years. So I would say if we can get another 15 to 20 years out of it, that would be a big thing. Ma'am?
a win.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm sure there'll be version 7 or 8 by that time. And then understanding the billing. Billing and metering are very intertwined. What one does definitely affects the other. So you could actually contribute, you could put probably some of these data points in either category. But we've identified about 225 accounts that were not being billed correctly since January. We've updated 205 locations. An example is maybe a meter was being charged an irrigation rate, which should have been domestic, which domestic means you're paying super as well. The rate for irrigation and water, domestic water and irrigation water are the same, but it's resulting of the sewer. Or perhaps we had some locations where they weren't being charged the base rate in that master meter example. Maybe some of the units had been built in another phase and we had not updated the billing system correspondingly. So we've done 205 of those. We just wrapped up a downtown water audit. So we went and looked at all of the locations downtown, found some locations that were corrected and meters that were in the ground and had usage on them that hadn't been properly applied to an account. We're getting all those reconciled. We're getting ready to start on the Bluefield area. That'll be next. And then, as y'all may know, that's an old water association that the city acquired back around 2008.
Doug was around for that one too.
So it's about 15 years old, kind of like, there's some things that need to be cleaned up.
Our acquisition is 15 years old.
Right.
The system is much older than
But
that.
much older, yeah. And the record keeping,
Yes.
much older too. Protocols and communications for back billing, so all these meters that will find me, we're going to have conversations with mostly starting with commercial right now, but we'll also move into residential at some point. So developing some protocols and corresponding, collaborating with Burke on what our legality of that is and have a good plan for that. And then also collaborating with the building department to try to get regular reports on COs, which then prompt us to do a final cursory check to make sure we're billing everything correctly. So those are some of the things we've been doing on the billing side that will continue to be a big focus. And then personnel changes, if y'all remember, one of the recommendations was to separate meter and billing into two different entities. Those are fully separated, and getting the billing side really stood up. Their focus right now is on the back billing, trying to get all that done and then move into the daily operations of billing. Spent a lot of time on metering. Again, thinking about our metering system, instead of it being like a system that's running like a well-oiled machine, we had some things that we needed to fix. And we're kind of in a rebuilding, kind of getting it all back up to speed and getting the AMI system going. And so we have a new person that's helping identify the water meters that we need to go explore. Maybe we need to add GPS locations to that aren't associated with accounts. We also added a separate team in metering that only focused on trying to change out antennas, trying to fix locations that aren't being billed correctly, while also continuing to maintain the daily operations of metering, which is doing all the manual reads that we have until we get all the equipment. So that's kind of what we're, from a personnel standpoint, but I think we're in a good place right now. We're fully staffed up, so that's going well. So just a summary for the first part of our presentation. Made a lot of investments. We're seeing some successes from that. We need to continue to do that when we get the new equipment in. Metering and billing, I think separating those out has been good. We'll need to continue to do that. When we get the new material in, we'll continue to work on those updates, continue to track the unknown water losses, but the trend lines, I think, are favorable right now. And then moving into meter audits for our metering infrastructure team will be the focus. Any questions on water loss before we move on?
Or water, period.
Or
You're moving
water.
to sewer now, right?
Moving to capital improvement plan next.
Okay. Sewer.
Water and sewer. Yes, ma'am. So again, these two documents, water, we did one for the wastewater treatment plant, we did one for the overall water eval. Both of those, the intent was to look at all of our facilities, look at all of our treatment processes, and then also try to look forward to try to predict what we needed from a capacity standpoint. So that was the intent of these. We wrapped up both of those earlier last year. I think this was dated May of '24, and this one was April. So they were kind of going at the same time. The other thing I think we really wanted, Mary was really involved in this too, is we wanted a roadmap of how to best utilize the capital improvement funds in the future. What is the highest priority? What is the most critical? And so we did that, and looking at a 20-year horizon with the intent of trying to not run everything to failure, but be preventative and try to get out ahead of that. So what I've got here, and I've got some handouts to take away, so I know this is a lot. Our spreadsheet looks a lot different. It gets a little bit unwieldy because it does go out to 2043, but for the board's purposes, I just digested it down to the next 7 years because frankly, anything more than 7 years is, who knows, what's gonna happen between now and then. But we're certainly trying to prepare for that. We have to have some flexibility built in. On both water and sewer, I did assume 5% external funding, either through grants or appropriations or other assistance from other entities. We've been pretty successful from that in the last year or two. I don't know what the future looks like for that, but just keep that in mind, that if that funding does not come through, there'll be a little bit more liability there. For water only, we're looking at 17 million just in the next 7-year window. And then if you want to think about a board term horizon, it's recommended for to spend 11 million over the next 4 years. Everything highlighted in brown came directly from our eval recommendation in the time. We did have to shift a few of these things. For example, the eval recommended a new production well. I think about 2026 or 7, somewhere in that time frame. That's just to add some additional capacity because we were nearing up the 80% mark, which is kind of a threshold for the Department of Health. And based on some feedback that we've heard from other engineers and people in that industry, there's no capacity or ability for well drillers for the next 2 to 3 years, just based on all the ARPA money and everybody being backlogged. So we shifted that a little bit, moved that out into 27 and 28. We feel like it's probably realistic, and I don't think that's going to put us in too much of a bind from a capacity standpoint. But that's just an example of some of the modifications we made since the last time it was presented to the board back last fall. And then wastewater, similarly, everything highlighted in orange are recommendations from the eval. The 2 projects added in blue are new. That's the Josie Creek lift station replacement. That was identified as a need when we were evaluating some facilities at the North Star Park, and that were kind of nearing or at capacity for that station. The mayor's been very helpful in trying to help identify some funding for that. And so we're still working through that. And then likewise, part of that eval is we identified that Josie Creek is going to need upgraded because Josie Creek is, I'm sorry, I said that wrong, Trim Cane. Trim Cane is downstream of Josie. So if you upgrade all the pumping and piping system for Josie, you need to also upgrade it for Trim Cane. So that'll be on the docket as well. $1.5 million for Trim Cane. And we're hoping we can get Josie down to a minimal investment. We'll see how that goes.
And with those 2 are like the biggest pump stations we've got. They have more sewage coming through those 2 than Grouch.
Besides influent, yes. Trim Cane is essentially the north, probably the west half to 2/3 of town plus the north part of the north. So it's probably a third to a quarter of the city in the northwest quadrant generally. But yeah, it's a big station. Trim Cane is where our old lagoon is off of Garrett Road. Familiar with that area. I think the other thing on this, the big change from the last time that the improvement plan was presented is we have really accelerated some of the wastewater treatment plant projects with the ultimate goal of trying to increase capacity as soon as possible. So we have 2 major projects going on right now. The first is the aerator and the electrical upgrade. We're under contract for that. The contractor is actually mobilized on site. We're getting going. It's around a $9 million project. That project is just going to get us back into compliance on a regular basis due to the failures that we're having due to the aeration system. The second project, which we're about 50% through with design right now, is actually adding package B and D from the eval, which is the headworks and the clarifiers, around a $16 million, $13 million project. And initially those projects were staggered. But if we went back and said, all right, what do we need to do to get our capacity increased as quickly as we can to open up, unlock room for future development and growth? How quickly can we do that? That is what this plan reflects. So we're we consolidated those two projects, we're fast tracking the design, having those constructed and online by mid-2027. And Mary will share with you the schedule here in just a short.
I want to weigh in here just for a minute,
Yeah.
because I want to flesh it out a little more for new folks as well as the involvement. One of the things that we simply have to do is to be able to expand, because if not, we're not going to be able to grow. And right now, we are in a window of opportunity. I've talked to Joe Max Higgins about this on a number of occasions. We're in a window of opportunity of growth right now, and we need to be able to keep that window open long enough for people to develop between what's going on with the aluminum plant, what's going on with Cinco mega site, all of those things. People want to live in Starkville / Ottawa County. They want to live to the west of that.
Right.
And so we've got to be able to accommodate that growth. And without doing these, we would not be able to do that in a timely fashion to make sure that we can at least get in that window of opportunity. So I had asked Edward to push that forward, to get those numbers, to see what it would look like. And so that's kind of the why of this, is because we really are in a time crunch of taking advantage, because those windows close. And so if we can't be a place where people want to live and where they can get the basic infrastructure services, then they'll go find somewhere else. So we want it to be us. Okay, back to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that color commentary. You can just see the daunting task that it is, $43 million over the next 7 years. Over the upcoming term, if we follow this plan, we'll need to spend about $28 million of it. The majority of that, as y'all know, going at the wastewater treatment plant, but there's other projects in the distribution and transmission system wastewater. So this is what it looks like if you graph it out. Amount per year, water in blue, green is wastewater, and then the accumulated amount year over year, which shows the 40 million in 7 years, and water is going to be a little over 10 million. So question is, well, before we get to the question of how we pay for it, I'll let Mary talk a little bit about the schedule so you have a good feel for it. Because like the mayor said, we have pretty much fast-tracked these wastewater treatment plant projects. I mean, I know 2027 seems like a long way away, but from a wastewater treatment plant scale project and all the complexities that go into the design, long lead times for materials, and then getting qualified contractors to come on board to do it, that's lightning speed. So I just want to kind of give you that context a little bit. So just an update for the capital improvement. We've accelerated the wastewater treatment projects primarily for capacity. We've updated some costs. We've shifted a few things around due to contractor availability, and we've added Josie and Trim Cane. Those are the major things. So Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about schedule?
So this slide right here just covers the wastewater treatment plant and a few transmission projects that we have in the works for wastewater. The green at the top is the aerator replacement project. So we kind of graphed out as far as starting with design all the way through to final construction. You see we've had design going on since 2023. And then now we are actually in the construction phase now. Their notice to proceed was actually last week for construction. They had done some pre-purchase of equipment last fall, waiting for all those things to come on site. The orange that you see is the headworks, and it runs kind of concurrently with the blue, which is the secondary clarifiers project. They are broken out separately just because the clarifiers will be finished a little bit after the headworks project is finished, but not that much longer after. And then the design, since it was added on to the headworks, it was started later. And we've also done the major equipment purchase for those projects as well. We just issued the POs for the grit removal and screening within the last month. The purple you see is the Stark Road force main replacement. We have applied to receive an ARC grant for that. The gap that you see between that is design and expected release of funding. And so we can't move forward with anything until we know that we're going to get the funding. And so we have the application, preliminary engineering process at the beginning, and then just that wait period before we hear if we're going to get the money or not.
We believe we will. I mean, the governor has approved us moving forward with it, so we anticipate that we will get
Yes,
that.
we're in the environmental review right now, is what Phyllis at PDD is working on. The last one you see in the green is the Josie Creek lift station upgrade. We've done some very preliminary design on it to start with. And one other bar that we have on there is if we have to purchase any easements, one of the ideas that we've talked about is moving the location of the lift station. And so there would be a process within this project to worry about easements or property purchase, if needed, so. And as you can see though, for the most part, all of these projects are projected to be done, mid-2027. So it's a lot going on all at one time that they all hit. Major projects for water, at the top in the green is the new production well. We are currently doing design on that project, and we have staggered the bidding and contract award and construction based on the conversations that we've had about contractor availability. The Curry Street well rehab is currently going on right now. We have a group will be on site next week to perform an inspection of the well. And then based on what they find with the inspection, we'll move forward with the scope for repair and rehab of the well. The Bluefield water treatment plant rehab, that is actually being submitted to the Department of Health for review right now. We're having to replace some filter media and repair one of the filters at Bluefield plant, as well as some piping. The purple is the Bluefield area water main replacement project. We received a STAG grant for that. It is currently under design. A lot of preliminary engineering going into that one. We also do have to apply for the grant. Like we've told we're going to get the funding, we just have to put an application, formalize it, and all that kind of stuff. The green is the Curry Street tank rehab. It is due to be repainted. We inspected it 2 years ago, and the last time it was repainted was in 2008. So it's time for that one to be repainted. And the Stark Road water main replacement, this could be done in conjunction with force main replacement. It's staggered a little bit behind it to allow the force main to go through first and then do the water. But it would finish about the same time as the force main project, a little bit after. 2028 as opposed to 2027. But for the most part, as you see on all these, they're also planning on being done, end of 2027, beginning of 2028, so.
Questions about that? No, we're running low on time, so I'll try to speed it up, Mayor. Apologize about that. So, how are we going to pay for it? This is just one scenario, possibility for the board to think about, consider, just to kind of walk you through how we arrived at this. You can see the year at the top. The second line is existing budget capital funding. So we have budget funds for capital improvement in our current water sewer budget. And what I did is I took that amount, that does include the rate increase from last year. And basically what I did is took that number, divided by 2, half to water, half to sewer, and reduced the funding needed for all those projects that we just went through. And the result, whatever's left, is just assume that we would borrow money, because especially you look at fiscal year 2026, you need $10 million to do this accelerated schedule, and then 27 you need another $7 million. That's just a lot of money that's going to be difficult to do quickly. So you will see in 28 there is going to be some additional funding necessary. I did cap out the limit of the debt. Just the board, just a reminder, just issued $7 million, just sold those bonds, right? Terminology. We've authorized $6 million. $8 million. And then this also contemplates an additional 6. So I got this backwards. So that adding all those up will get you to 21 million. And you can see water will have some additional needs in 27 and sewer in 28. And so what does that look like? The majority of that is going to turn into, if you borrow that much, what does that look like from a debt payment standpoint? The blue line is what our current debt repayment schedule is. You can see the tick up in 26 due to the $7 million that were just sold. It does come back down favorably because we have some debt that's rolling off. So that kind of gets back to that normal debt payment amount that have been budgeted in the last couple of years. But if you add in the 8 million, the additional 8 million, which is there in orange, and around 610,000 a year, and then 6 million, additional 6 would be at 450. You add those to it, that will give you the red graph there, which would generate another 1 to 1.2 million per year in debt payment. And so how would you wind up paying for that is if you put all of that into a sewer rate, what potentially would that look like? This is just one scenario. It's changing the base, going up $1 from $9 to $10 in the base rate, and then changing your variable rate from 450 to 650, so going up $2 in the variable rate. So you can see what that looks like. That would generate that $1 to $1.2 million per year based on our model. And then if you did go ahead and incorporate those changes, this is what the comparison would look like to other sewer areas and municipalities. The red line includes East Octavia Water District and Great River. Great River is a private sewer entity that serves Sunset Subdivision as well as some areas down South Montgomery at the end. And then if you just look at the munis, it's around 1661 for the base rate, and then variable rate, you can see right below it. That's the average. And then if you look at what the impact to a typical customer would be, this is what that is. We pulled the numbers of what our average residential user used based on the financials from April 2025 is 2,884 gallons. And what that translates into is a $4.77 increase just in sewer.
And let's talk about it. We're breaking sewer and water separately because sewer, it costs more to treat a gallon of wastewater than it does to pump a gallon of water, fresh water out of the ground. So we need to understand what those expenses are and appropriately account for them. And that's why we're breaking them out differently. And that's why and the other reason we're focusing on wastewater right now is because of the dramatic need for our wastewater capital improvement expenditures. And so that's what we're doing. But going forward, the breakout between water and sewer is important for us to know what we're spending on each one.
And billing.
Excellent.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Could
Well,
you
we will
repeat
stop
that?
talking then. Thank you, Siri. But anyway, that's the reason for the breakout differently. Water will come back at a later date, but sewer is what's our critical path right now.
Right.
So, is this right?
And I want to be sure that we all understand that this is bonding 21 million of 25 million that's needed. There are some other monies in the ether that may or may not come to fruition, and there's always that opportunity perhaps for appropriations or grants. And so we're kind of betting on the come a little bit with that to try to limit the amount that we're having to borrow.
Basically, it's
fund
a
depreciation going forward, so we're not back in this budget again. That's the main thing.
$1 for the base rate and $2 for the variable rate. In essence, $3 if you're 1,000 gallons or less. Yes.
You see the Great River up there. We've done appraisals out in the counties where they've come in and taken over. They came in Lowndes County here too, bought a number of these systems, and you see what the rate is. And those systems were old systems that hadn't been maintained, and now they have to double and triple the rates, and it's just causing all sorts of problems. We certainly will be in that situation.
No. Well, and if you look at East Octavia, they've had to recently raise theirs because they were unable to pay their bills and were in a position to have to pay. So they went from, I think, 30 to 35, and now they're about to go to 45. So, okay.
That's all I have.
That's it. Any other questions? Because this new board, part of the reason you guys are sitting at the table today is because this is going to come rolling your way within the next couple of board meetings. Okay. So just want to make sure that we.
I've been there.
All right. Very, very thorough. I'm assuming no one else has anything they want to talk about. All right. Thank you very much. We will now move to our agenda and see if we can work our way through this here pretty quickly. We've got a couple of sets of minutes. Ms. Huskinson, anything from you, and Ms. Harden, anything from you?
We're good.
So we consent on those two items. One's a work session and one's a regular board. Good? Okay. And under mayor's comments, I'm gonna do this now because actually both of these things will be over with by Tuesday. We've got a big Dizzy Dean tournament this weekend at Cornerstone. Yes, it's 3 days, started today. I hope the rain doesn't mess them up too badly, but it started today, so you've got today, Saturday, and Sunday. And we've got, I think, a really exciting large group, so they're ready to take it on. And then Rodney's here, we've got an air race next week, which will be starting on Tuesday. So anyway, it's that women's air race that's coming through and using us as their first stop, so that's pretty exciting. All righty, and anything anybody wants to have for posterity on the agenda, certainly can do that. And we will be bidding farewell to two of our members. That'll be part of that meeting.
Try not to cry.
And we'll have a little reception ahead of time, so we'll have that available and bid them farewell. Thank you and farewell. We've got a public appearance from Mr. Johnson. He's going to be with us for that. If you recall, for those of you who may not have participated, that's a 10-minute window. So we will afford him his desire. He put in his request yesterday, I believe it was, or Tuesday, whenever it was. Wednesday. There we go. So anyway, he will have 10 minutes to make a presentation to the board. We've got public hearings that are going to be our 21-19-11s, and we also have special exceptions. Lyle, are you covering those, Mr. Haviland?
Yes, okay, so the first one was for 2503, that's the one from the school district, for them basically to be allowed to do manufactured homes down the west side of Sand Road. So instead of the board receiving a bunch of separate manufactured home, like special exception requests, instead, now they're just going steadily down it. I think there's still 33 lots. I think of those 8 are listed as currently previously approved, so 25 basically would be being requested to be approved here, but essentially now it would just be green lighting all of those existing lots that have been done by the school district for manufacturing.
So we get to do it in one fell swoop.
One fell swoop, and this does not include anything on going along Louisville.
And it greatly simplifies the process for anybody who's wanting to lease one of those.
110%. And it was unanimously voted for approval by the planning executive.
Good, okay. And
Right,
then
there is another one.
Yes.
The next
there's
one being
borrow
the
pit.
borrow pit, so special exception, this one is from Burns Dirt. And so essentially this is looking to essentially have a borrow pit, where in which they're going to basically take soil aggregate from the site, pull it out of the site, and then use it in local development. There's some type of chalky dirt that they're talking about. It's very, very valuable. Essentially, at the Planning and Zoning Commission, the main thing that neighbors are interested in what's going to happen, and essentially they're going to, in theory, expand the existing pond that is on site.
There was a concern, I got a phone call, so I know, and I don't know if Daniel said she did not leave a number with him, but I got a phone call from a neighbor who was concerned about dust and that sort of thing. So is there any effort to water it down or control of that in any
I can
way?
follow back up with it. I do know that they do have to abide by state law regarding pulling their disturbance for anything that large. So we will look at it when it comes in. And they did have to submit a plan for basically like any type of runoff mitigation of those sorts. But when looking at the site, there is a fair amount of trees and vegetation that blocks from where the proposed digging area is from where they're actually neighboring properties, but I'm happy to follow up on that.
Okay, that'd be good, thank you.
It was voted unanimously for approval by the planning executive.
Okay, thank you. And then the next several are going to be the 21-19-11s. So these will be the public hearings that we'll have on mowings as well as dilapidated structures. And then under mayor's business, we've got lighting. Well, as part of our annexed area, we've got lighting set for Lakeside, Boyd, Ruth, and Sand Creek. Sand Creek? Sand Creek, is it Sand Creek Road? I just thought it was.
Yeah, Sand Creek and Ruth.
Sand Creek, okay, all right.
So you
Thank
have Boyd, Lakeside, then Sand Creek and Ruth.
Okay, all right. So anyway, Edward got the costs associated with that from 4 County, and so we've got the funding to move forward with those. So that'll give us another opportunity to meet our obligations associated with the annexed areas. Could we get a consent for that one?
Consent.
All right, thank you. And then a resolution, this is authorizing the liens for the mowings that Mr. Smiley's people did as a part of our 21-19-11 previously. So could we get consent for those? All right. And then we have this discussion of the resolution of the ingress and egress related to Touch of Love that Mr. Johnson's going to come speak with us about as well. So we will hear what he has to say, and then the board can consider the issue. Under the airport, we've got aviation fuel filters and gaskets. Anything about that, Rodney, worth sharing here?
As you said, we have a second Jet A truck, and we pushed the quantity over 5,000 this year.
Okay, all right, can we get consent for that? All right, and then the lower bid from Pace Excavation for our alternate bid on the runway? Is that right? What's the timeline on getting the runway, let's say, open and ready for service? Do we have one?
Next year before football season.
So 26, August of 26, say? All right, cool. Consent for that one? All right, thank you. And then we've got appointments to be made as it relates to BOAA. So and these folks have said they're willing to serve. Okay.
Yes, Mayor. And currently, we still have two, Ward 3 and Ward 7. We potentially have someone for Ward 7 we're talking to right now, and advertisements have been placed in the newspaper.
Okay.
Trying to fill vacancies.
All right, and so we can look for someone for Ward 3. All right, okay, consent for that one?
Consent.
All right, thank you. And then we've got a food exception for the pickleball recreation facility. New development in that, they are going to build their own building. So it's on Miley Road, no, it's on Airport Road where Pollard dead ends into Airport Road. It's a vacant lot there. They're gonna build a building for pickleball and assorted other things.
And just a small note about that one, so they currently have not gone through site plan, they're just now starting architectural review. So if the board would do this approval to condition that it be upon the CO being issued, that's when the 6-month time frame for them to actually take advantage of the exception.
Okay, all right. So, I believe we had issues about that one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so engineering, Mr. Burnett?
Yes, ma'am.
We've got professional services for drone flights, and this is associated with, Burns is doing drone flights as it is right now over 182. This is to add them to the Main Street project so that we can monitor the Main Street project. Anything beyond that you want to add?
That's pretty much it. It just gives you a true catalog of what happened. You can use it for various measurements and different things, so it's a very good record.
Okay, all right. Consent for that one? Consent. Okay. And then we've got the same, pretty much the same thing for professional services associated. Mr. Stewart is going to be monitoring that closely for any architectural elements that might come into play as we're working our way down Main Street. So consent for that one? Okay. And then we've got amendment number 2 on the street improvement list. Mr. Burnett, I'll let you give a little overview of that.
Sure. This is an amendment to the street improvement list that the board approves. When we make changes to that list, we ask for board approval to change anything. So the reason for this change is twofold. The first is we had 2 emergency repairs. One was on East Garrett, and the other was on Pat Station Road. And so part of those drainage repairs had to demolish the roadway down to its bottom. And so part of the change is to pave the portions that were demolished for construction. And so to fund that, we have removed Spring Street, which was scheduled for this year. I've talked to Alderman Brooks about this. And the reason it's being removed is, first of all, it helps fund these emergencies. We also have a grant from the state, a TA grant, to provide sidewalks and bike lanes along the corridor of Spring Street. And so inherently, that work would destroy the pavement anyway. So it's prudent not to pave a road that you're not to demolish. So it really was fortunate that they were a good swap and were able to pay for the emergencies out of a planned street already.
Yeah, actually, we're very lucky that it came out that way.
So that's kind of how that worked, and it was very close to the same monetary value for the street. So.
Okay, consent for that one? Okay. And then we have acceptance for the May financials. Anything exceptional about those, Ms. Harden, that we need to know about? Okay, consent on the financials. And then we have budget adjustments. Anything about those? So this just...
These are all just adjustments. We're allowed to do one per quarter because of the end of the term. And there is no funding being taken out of any fund balance or anything like that.
Okay, so just a little swapping, pocket
Swapping around, okay.
Okay.
Consent.
Consent for that one? All right. Then fire department, we'll let Ms. Malone go to her professional association conference. Consent for that one?
Consent.
Okay. HR, we've got replacement positions.
They are replacements.
They are all replacements. Okay. Consent
Consent.
for those? All righty. And then IT, we've got 5 more cameras that we get to purchase.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
All right, that's wonderful. Glad to know they're ready to be Yes, sir.
Let me say very briefly, I must say this, they've done a great job on that. You know, we had a lot of discussion on that, and they've been coming under budget, and hopefully we'll have the same dollar amount going for the budget. I know you and your great team are meeting on the budget, so we continue that same level of funding at least for the next year, because it's phenomenal how they're putting the cameras up.
Yes, sir. That is the plan. That was what we planned for when we did it this past year, so absolutely. Okay, consent for those?
Consent.
All right, then we've got parks. This is the J.L. King Pavilion improvements. Alderman Vaughn, I believe you visited with them on those?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can we get consent for those?
Consent.
Okay. And then rejecting construction bids, the park signs came in outrageous. And so we're going to reject those bids and, yeah, well, that and cut them back, you know, we'll do them in phases. So consent for that rejection. All righty, and then change order from McKee in the amount of $59,000, which is the additional entrance pavement. We have had the construction has pretty much torn it up. And so in order to have a really nice new park, we probably should have a nice new road to go with it. So that's what this is for. It comes out of the park bond funds, no issue there. Yes, that's, well,
No,
yes.
it is bond
Percent.
funds, you're right.
No problem, all right. Consent for that one?
Consent.
And then under utilities, we have anything, the EV chargers, this is closing out that grant, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, consent for that one?
Consent.
All righty. And then advertising for the outage management system proposals, you want to?
Yeah, this is something that we've been talking about for a while. We didn't want to pull the trigger on it until we had our software system revamped. And so now we've caught our breath collectively from that and ready to start on OMS. OMS is basically the system that will identify any outages due to intelligence from either the AMI metering system or inline data, things such as reclosers or switches that could predict outage for an area, primarily electric, but we could also do a manual polygon for water outages if we knew that something was about to occur. And so what this does is it allows is an interface directly with the customer, so they can then see a map. We've seen the maps that show outage areas. It can also give real-time updates to the customers on anticipated restoration time, any updates along the way. So it's a real customer tool for communication, but it also gives our internal operations teams a snapshot of this is the area that we predict is out based on all the intelligence that we have. For example, the last storm we had one section of Plantation Homes. For whatever reason, they never made the call in to the office, and we never were aware that they were out. And so
They were using social media.
Right, well, they wound up, didn't get restored till the following day. But if we had this outage management system, it would say, all right, these customers are still out. We think that they're still out. And we would go do spot checks before we closed up for the day. So anyway, that's an example. It may be too much.
No, that's great, thank you.
And it's also, in addition to that, when we're talking about showing the polygon, it's much more targeted in who you identify than the current alert system.
Yes.
Because we'll blast out
Yes.
at 4 in the morning that there's a water main break in Timber Cove, but I get it, not live in Timber Cove. This allows you to not wake me up at 4 in the morning.
Assuming that we have updated customer information.
That's right.
Can we get consent for that one? All right. Advertising for the supervisory control of the SCADA system proposals. Okay, consent for that one?
Consent.
And then consolidated pipe quote, so for the force main. Consent. All right, thank you everyone. That's it. We have nothing for executive session. So thank you everyone. Have a great weekend and